All right. Hey, folks, good morning. It is Saturday morning. We're on my Saturday morning coffee workbench. I'm going to do some artwork for Spelljammer Combat and Exploration today. Give me a second to check my signal here real quick, make sure I'm coming through okay, and then we'll get to work here for a couple hours. We're going to play with some ship tokens for both vessels. Ship tokens. Mic check. All right, sounds like I'm coming through okay. Well, yeah, we're going to do some ship token layouts and stuff. And if we have time, we're going to do some, we're going to illustrate some planets as well. So give me a second here to kick my signal across the internet, and then we'll get started here. So let's see. I'm going to post there, and you want to cross post. I'm doing a internet thing here real quickly. Hitting to the Discords. So just not to bore anybody that's hopping in here real quick, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and I publish them online. I've been focusing specifically on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for the past 5 years, and there are a slew of links in the description down below to different works that I've already created over the past couple of years that you can check out. They all have extensive free previews. If you think this stuff is cool, if you add it to your campaign, consider making a purchase to encourage more behavior like this. But it's a good opportunity for you just to take a look at the kind of work that I produce, the kind of illustrations that I do. If you think this stuff is cool, then thanks. Thanks for being around and being involved. So we're going to continue working on Spelljammer Combat and Exploration today. This is a supplement that we were created. I wasn't satisfied with what was produced by Wizards of the Coast in August 2022 for the Spelljammer Spelljammer Adventures in Space supplement that they created. So I wanted to add on a little bit more mechanics and ideas. There we go. Okay, cool. So that's all clear. That's all clear. Let's get started here into the piece. For those interested, I just posted that I'm live on Twitter. If you're interested and still on the platform, I'm at Phil Kearney. I always post notifications that I'm live there. The best way to support the channel is to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, get notifications when I'm live in the future. We have a Discord channel now that you can get to through the Discord community here. My Patreon, if you're interested in what's coming up and playtests I have going on, you can check that out. Twitter is here. We're episode 298 right now of this. And so this is the book that we've been building, Spelljammer's Combat and Exploration. You can see us creating that book cover on the full playlist here back on episode 15. Boy, that was a while ago. So what do? I run campaigns from level 1 to 20 in about 200 to 250 hours in 5th edition. And so most of the books that I've published on the DMsGuild already were either things that were created as a result of the campaign I was running, and we just organically came up with new mechanics or ways of resolving different ideas that we wanted to play with. Other instances, I wanted to run a specific type of campaign, and the mechanics to do so didn't exist, so I have to create them. The Spelljammer project is one of the latter, in that I grew up in the 80s with the 2nd edition version of Spelljammer, which had active ship combat and a lot more interaction on the ship level with characters, instead of just them being floating dungeons that would bump into each other for you to attack each other on deck at the 5-foot scale. I wanted to have actual ship combat, and 5e didn't deliver. So I wanted to create my own system using 5e mechanics, which this supplement is successfully doing. Now that we play tested it, it works well. We did layouts. We've now broken it down so each idea fits on the page. But while we're going through this process, we have a pretty extensive, we have some pre-generated ships which were in the Spelljammer's Adventures in Space supplement, as well as the creation of fighter craft so that you can have ship-to-ship combat like, X-Wings and stuff. So we wanted to include craft as well, but I wanted to make sure that we were going to properly illustrate and have these things depicted. So I think I need to add a page here between page 10 and 11. So I'm going to drop an additional page in here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm basically going to make this just a large grid, and then we're going to place the idea here is to place each vessel and fighter craft at the proper scaling on this grid, so that we would have here pre-generated ships. Page 10, we'd have all the quick statistics on what those ships are, and then on the next page we would have the actual illustration and label for all of the different craft and fighter and vessels that we have. So that's what we're going to go through the process of doing today. And if we can do that expediently, then we'll actually we'll get back to illustrating planets. So what I need to do first is I want to open up the vessel tokens that we created probably back around episode 160. So you guys can jump back into the full playlist here and go find where that was at if you're interested. But I think what I want to do is just start grabbing these things, and let's go duplicate the group and then drop them into the ship grid, duplicate a group, drop it into the ship grid, duplicate a group, drop it into the ship grid. We'll do this for a little bit. Duplicate the group and drop it in the ship grid. Duplicate the group and we'll drop it in the ship grid. Where are we at? Duplicate. Ship grid. How many more do we have to do? Phew, a slew of them. All right, let's grab the nautiloid. Duplicate the group and drop it in the ship grid. All right. That's a slew of them. Get rid of that, 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 get rid of that. I don't want these things to sit. Let's spread these out a bit. I think I could probably make all of these fit okay. We'll figure it out. I want to get all the ships in here so we can take a look. If I can merge all these down. Merge that group. It's now by my nautiloid, and now my nautiloid and pray. Beep, 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 beep. So I'm trying to get this thing done so we can publish it at the end of the month. I'm not sure if I'm going to hit that goal or not, to be quite frank. We're going to do our best. So normally on Saturday like this, I would work on one of my new campaigns. What did we just do there? Yeah, okay, we did the right thing. Cool. But if I want to get this thing published on time, I need to prioritize it. So I decided to put the Rubble Belt Hex Scroll campaign on hold for the day so that I can continue working on this. I got a video to make after this that I'll publish tomorrow, and I'll post it online for folks, looking at the way that different types of pilots, other than just, oops, I didn't need to do that. Let's delete that. Go back to our strike ship. Duplicate onto the ship layer. Almost done. Then we'll start arranging stuff, and then we'll get down to into the fighter craft as well. Beep beep beep. So this is production stuff. It's not necessarily the most exciting stuff out there, but the ships are cool, so I'm happy about that. So once we get into it, we'll be able to take a closer look at what we got going on here. I just need to get these things up onto the proper map. Duplicate. Ship. Duplicate. Almost done. Yeah, we do illustrations for the book itself Monday through Saturday, or Monday through Friday typically, and then on Monday and Thursday night I do a creature token art for an Eberron adventure that I'll be publishing this year, and Monday, Tuesday, and Friday lunchtimes, including this upcoming Monday, we convert characters to the martial power system. It gives martial characters a spell pool to be able to create sword magic. Let's see. Bum, 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 bum. Good. Close that up. No. Good, here we are. Get rid of the lock, get rid of the lock. Let's select all, get rid of the locks. Merge down. Merge down. Here we go. Merge down. Merge down. Merge down. Night Spider. Scorpion. Shrike Ship. Space Galleon. Squid Ship. Star Moth. Turtle. Tyrant. Wasp. All right. Do I want to, maybe I should, do I want to alphabetize these? Is that the right way to do this? L-A-H-F, flying, living, lamprey, flying, living, lamprey, hammer, F-H-L-N, wasp, tyrant, turtle comes before tyrant, and star moth before turtle, squid before star moth, space galleon, shrike, damselfly, scorpion. Scorpion comes before tyrant, also comes before turtle, comes before shrike ship. Damselfly comes first. Night spider. There we go. Yerp, yerp. This is production work. How exciting! Everyone, come watch Phil do production work. It's this inspiring. Oh boy. Maybe I should be more selective about what I shout from the rooftops. Nah, fuck it. How are we supposed to be? How are we supposed to be proud of ourselves if we aren't proud of ourselves when we're not at our lowest? We can't be selectively proud of who we are. We just got to be who we be. There we go. Damsel flying. FGHIJKLLMN OPQRSHPQT turtle tyrant wasp. Good. All right. So there's our basic setup. Let's go build. I think we're gonna end up rebuilding the grid with a lighter touch, a lighter font. Where are we at currently? Like, I bet we can drop. Yeah, that grid is too thick. So once we actually calibrate how large we can make these ships to all fit on the page with the least amount of empty space, then we'll know how the size of the grid because I only want those pixels. I only want the grid to be 2 pixels wide. I think it's more like 4 right now. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, about 6. So it's about 3 times as thick as it needs to be. But this is a good base point for us to figure out how we'll have abundant room to fit these things on. It's obvious that we've got enough room to do this. So that's fucking fantastic. Now it's just a matter of making it all fit on the page smart. So flying fish, hammerhead, lamprey, living ship, nataloid, night spider. Well, maybe it's not as obvious as I thought. Night spider. We'll see. Scorpion. Shrike. Space Gillian. Squid. Star. Turtle. Wasp. Tyrant. And wasp. Scooch all that over. All right. I need to go find an air bubble. So give me a second. Go do that. Where do I want to find an air bubble at? Open. Oh, yeah, I should be able to find air bubble. Looking for a good sized one. Age 14 should be good. Oh, yeah. That's a good size air bubble. Fortress. Perfect. Duplicate and kick this over to the ships. Good. What's our opacity over here? %25. There. All right, so let's do that, and let's grab this. Where's our biggest? Here. Yeesh. Ship. If we transform the grid, I guess we can make this grid much larger. One, two, three, four, five, six. Still too big. Too small. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's try that. One, two, three, four, five. Blah, 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 bigger. Almost there, stay on target. There we go. That's the right size. And that's the right size. Cool. There's a concept. Squeezing is a thing that exists in 5e. Squeezing is when like a large size creature tries to fit through a space smaller than large size. Like a large size creature is 10 feet. It occupies a 10-foot space, right? It's like if I was a large size creature occupies a 10-foot space, right? But a large size creature can squeeze through a 5-foot space. It's called squeezing by reducing your size by half. A huge size creature can squeeze down to a large size. A gargantuan size creature can squeeze down to a 2x2 space and pass through it. It's at disadvantage. It doesn't have as good maneuverability. Well, you can do squeezing with these ships as well. So the full space that a hammerhead ship is occupying, since it's 250 feet long, and these are 50-foot squares that we're currently depicting the ships on, this hammerhead ship, like a horse, would occupy this 5x5 space on a 50-foot scale map because it has to be able to turn and stuff, right? Like a horse in combat or Tarrasque or dragon, anything. It's a square, right? But there is the ability to squeeze. So the idea of squeezing is that as long as your ship is narrow enough to fit through the passageway that you're going through, it can navigate through that space as though it were difficult terrain, and it's at disadvantage on dexterity saving throws, and it's you have advantage to hit them, just like any other squeezing mechanic would be. But the squeezing mechanics is generally, however, whatever the actual width of the ship is, not the space that it occupies, but the actual width of the ship. So like a night, like this, like this squid ship occupies a 4x4 space, but you could probably get it to reduce down to, you'd still have to occupy a 2x2 space. So you could get it to squeeze down to like this instead, to be 100 feet wide instead of 200 feet wide, for example. So squeezing is a thing, but the space that they're occupying is a way to be able to, like any other creature in 5e, what space they can maneuver and reach in freely. So that's why we have these bubbles around the ship, not only to depict the air bubble that would be surrounding the ship while it's going through wild space, but to also be able to depict accurately the space that it occupies for when it's being affected by like amplified spells or other effects that may hit an area of effect, or if you want to determine if a ship has cover from asteroids or other large objects that could potentially conceal it. So it comes up just like it comes up in 5e combat. Can I navigate through this narrow space? These are all things that have to be contemplated. So we need to have the same sort of mechanical language that we have in 5e combat for ship combat. So this 106-page document is basically taking the combat, exploration, and spellcasting chapters from the player's handbook in DMG and combining them into all the relevant mechanics that you would need to be able to perform 5e combat at a scale of 50 or 500 feet instead of just 5 feet as a character. So it gives us a ton of mechanical language that lets us do a bunch of fun stuff like kaiju versus mecha, and obviously ships like this, but also floating asteroids and massive scale objects. This supplement allows us to have that same 5e combat, 5e exploration interaction language at any scale from 5 feet to 100 million miles in size. So that was one of the primary goals of the book, was to be able to create that language so that you as a DM can set the scale and the scale of battle that you're dealing with and the different things that are going to interact in that space. So this Spelljammer book is a great way to be able to frame all that stuff, but from it we can extract things like Jaeger versus Kaiju, having golems versus giants. There's all sorts of really fun stuff that we'll be able to do with it. Dragon flight, like massive scale dragons flying through terrain. City-sized robots attacking each other. All sorts of fun stuff, working at these various size scales that we now have as a unified 5e mechanics language. Whether you love 5e or not, all the mechanics that go into running a round of 5e combat exist in this book for you to be able to parse and use as you please. If you want that depth of complexity in your ship combat, we offer it to you. If you want something more simple like Saltmarsh, maybe you just want to use the action economy that we have for siege weapons that we posted a video for last week. We're going to post a video tomorrow about different types of pilots and what you need to do to become a pilot. So Spelljammer's Adventures in Space simplifies it, I think, a little bit too much. And I think it's missing some opportunities to do some cool stuff with piloting in general. So I'm going to take an opportunity to explore that space, but all in due time. So let's see. I've got my hammer ship. I'm going to grab my there. And there. And there. Take that. I'm going to duplicate the layer here. Take it to the damselfly. Over here. We'll get the damselfly lined up. So it sits in its space. Very good. Circles are squares in D&D, so even though its tips hang out of the circle, that doesn't really matter so much. The circle is just an aesthetic indicator. It's not. It's technically accurate in that, you know, your ships are surrounded by spheres, but because spheres are simple shapes, but in D&D spheres are squares because D&D. Duplicate, and then bump. Let's see, flying fish occupies a 3x3 space. Is that right? Let's get our. Wait for this to zoom in. I can tell that I can feel the I can feel the graphics processor attempting to execute the command, changing resolution. Come on, buddy, you can do it. There we go. Let's get a look. Where's my bombard? Good question. There it is. Duplicate. Ship. There we go. Yo. Damsel. Scoot you over. Bombard is a 3x3, so cool. Let's unlatch that. Merge group here. Duplicate that layer. Push it up here. Bombard. Most of the time, I focus on illustrations during live streams because graphic design work like this isn't nearly as interesting as, you know, creating illustrations is. But this is a critical part of the process in building a book at all, so I felt it was worth time investing here so y'all can see how these things sit. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Bombard. Damselfly. Okay, how far up the page can I actually get? Two inches from the top. This is where I can be on the page and still be within bounds of borders. So let's start like that and see where it takes us. Flying fish is 3x3. Thank you. You can see that they don't have the exact numbers. They're rounding up. So like a damselfly is 100 feet long, we round up. A wasp is the only thing that's been modified in this book. The wasp is listed, I think, as 80 feet long in Spelljammer's Adventures in Space, but if you do that, you don't take its nose or its tail into account, so I decided to include it just to give the wasp a little bit more size, so it can carry more and it can tank more damage to make it a more viable, like your baby adventurer's first ship. Like a wasp is a really good first experience type vessel, my opinion anyway, because like I said, it can take a lot of damage. It's got some space to itself. It's not uncomfortable. It's got good weapons. It's like a good general craft or a vessel to have as your team's fighter ship or as your base of operations, as it were. We'll get into fighter craft in a few minutes. Everything in due course. So this will be flying fish. And then hammer, head, modified. One without the other. That seems to fit. Ooh, this is going to turn out okay, I think. Lamprey is what, a 3x3 also? Yeah, barely, but it is. Lamprey, we can give it the flying fish. Also has a 3x3 space. We can just duplicate that. That works. Lamprey. That's not so bad. We could slide these over one token or one square. They all sit on that. I think this is gonna work. Okay, let's take the living ship. Living ship's a 2x2, right? God, it's such a tiny ship. Living ships are fucking cool, man. With the Trant in them, the way that we build ship combat is that the pilot or the squadron commander can use their hit points, kind of like the ward allies spell, where you can like take damage. You can choose to take damage for the ally that you have targeted with the what is that called? Warding bond, I think is what it's called. Bonding ward. The cleric spell that lets you lifelink to them so you can take damage for them. When you focus on a helm and you become the pilot, you automatically gain that warding ability for your ship. So instead of the ship taking damage, you can take damage as the pilot instead, which means that you can be healed by your allies. But it also means as your character gains level, your ship becomes more difficult to destroy, which means you can throw more ships at your team to fight, because their ship is going to last longer because the pilot is going to become more and more tanky. Cool thing about the living ship is that it has a Trant built into it, and the Trant is a creature that is always considered focusing on and co-piloting on the helm. You can have multiple, using the system, you can have multiple characters piloting a ship together as co-pilots on the same helm. They just have to share their action economy together to make it work. I've got a fire going. I need to put another log underneath it. Hold on real quick. I'll be right back. Putting a log on the fire, keeping it warm here. It's like 20 degrees in Seattle, so it is a cold.net day here in Seattle. So I got a fire kicking back here. I just want to keep that going. There we go. Load it up on lumber. It's so great. The only thing I ask from when my family asks me, hey, what do you want for Christmas? It's just give me gift cards to the lumber store so I can buy cut wood or just logs, and burn those for heat. Absolutely love logs. There's that. And oh good, the damsel has a 2x2. So Trents are tanky, so they basically add on an extra 100 some odd hit points to the living ship itself, and then if you have someone co-piloting on top of that, you can add their hit point pool to the ship as well. So you can protect the ship from being destroyed by the pilots choosing to take damage on behalf of the craft. Or ship, vessel. The vessels are over 50 feet in size, and fighter craft are up to 50 feet in size. So, the larger the ship, the more hit points they have. Ironically, fighter craft are super small, super cheap, very easy to afford, but they have very little hit points. So a pilot needs to have a lot of hit points if you're going to survive long in a dogfight. But that also makes them like an arrow ship, like an arrow craft. It's a sharpened blade with a gun on the back of it, basically. So it can do slashing damage as it flies by, and it's got a gunner on it that can take shots at you. You can knock those out. Like one good catapult hit, like one mangonel or a trebuchet hit can knock those out completely, like one shot them. So they're kind of like, well, they're called goblin arrows, right? So they're kind of like goblins in that these fighter craft are kind of like minions from 4th edition, where one hit can take out a fighter craft. The bigger the craft, the more beefy it gets, the more tanky it becomes, and becomes a bigger threat. So it's more like an orc or an ogre. But by the time you're like 9th level, ogres aren't a big problem. So the game scales like that. It's pretty cool how well it scales, actually. It's definitely worth your time checking out. Take what you. It's all in all the rules kind of stack on each other. So if you don't like one component, you can throw that away. Like if you don't like if you think attunement and being a spellcaster should be a requirement for being able to spell jam, then you can preserve that and use everything else except for our focus mechanics. Like if that's the only thing that you don't like, then you can just throw that away because the standard rules work as intended, unfortunately as intended. But there's nothing wrong with you using them if you want to. So there's a lot of flexibility in the books that I build. All the books that I have are like that. They stack on. They start with a premise, and then you start stacking on variant rules and considerations and additional variant rules to play out how these different ideas can work with each other until you build out a full mechanical system that is giving you a ton of narrative space for you to be able to make your own unique rulings for the campaign that you're running, because there's some base rules that are put into place that you can basically leverage off of or like use or oppose. Like, I don't like how that works, I'm going to do this instead. But this instead you may not have been inspired by unless you read the rules that we're presenting here for you to agree with or to decline. So just being exposed to other ideas, other games, and other ways of doing things allows you to have more control over the narrative that you're using in your games because you'll be more informed. Not a Lloyd. Night Spider might be a problem. We'll duplicate the layer. Stitch that up. Boom, get out of the way, Scorpion. I would have to put this here if I'm going to stay true to the one space border. Well, I don't have any spaces between here and here, so corners can touch. Okay, corners can touch. I'm okay with that. We'll start off like the, ooh, we need to have, okay, let's do this first, just to get everything in place, and then we'll have to figure out how we want to make space for labels, like so we can identify each of the craft. Maybe we could put like a number next to them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, and then put like a number in the corner here, 1, 2, maybe not. Maybe just having a label, maybe just labeling each of them would be the better choice. When we already have the labels, so maybe we just do that. That might be the better decision. We'll figure it out. That's what we're doing here today. We're sussing all this stuff out to see how we can do this. I've wanted to do this this compilation comparison because I think it's important to not make assumptions that people know what these different ships are, especially if they decide not to pick up SAIS. I know that we make mention of SAIS in here to basically bounce off of as like, you know, this is how it's presented, but here's alternate ideas that you can use instead. That's how we frame a lot of the book. We got an hour, 10:20. I still got an hour and some odd to go. We're doing great. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Actually, this is turning up pretty nicely. Scorpion. Strike. I don't know. Bow. What is this called? Shrike. That's okay. Right. This is what needs to change. Here, bring this down. There. Good. Space Galleon, also a 3x3 space. Well, yeah, all these tokens are included in a zip file, along with all the monsters and all the NPCs from Lattice Araxis and all the different creatures. We all have tokens for all that stuff. Squid ship. How are we doing on? Whew, we're doing pretty good on space so far. Still doing pretty good. Let's go up to the hammerhead. Duplicate this layer. Well, we're figuring it out. Nautiloid, we'll duplicate that. Space Galleon. There we go. Turtle. Scorpion. We'll duplicate the scorpion so we can give it to the turtle. And we can duplicate that for the tyrant. And then we've got the space galleon we can duplicate for the wasp. Good. Turtle. Oh my god, is this actually going to work? I don't know until I try. I never know until I try. What does that say? That means try. Tyrant. I know that some people's brains melt when they look at these ships and it's like the envelope isn't extending out like twice the distance, like this big. You don't need to. It's not important. What's more important in 5e combat is that because the ship combat, it doesn't care. In 2nd edition, everything was 500-foot scale. In 5e as it is, the air envelope, they don't want you engaging in ship combat. They want you to have the two ships bump into each other so you can engage in 5-foot combat, because that's the only combat system they've invested in playtesting to develop. So that's what they can offer. So the envelope size doesn't matter, but when you're actually using a 550 and 500-foot scale combat map together, then knowing the actual size of the ship is actually important. And an easy way to be able to keep track of how large something actually is by having that air bubble conform to the space that the ship occupies, so that you have a more clean, a mechanical look at, am I in the space of the ship or aren't I? So that's just a quality of life thing. But it is an aesthetic difference. But in this instance, I think I believe the quality of the project. I think the overall health of the project benefits from that difference, that change Just like I don't think it benefits the game to only allow spellcasters to be pilots, even though in the original second edition, Spelljammer, only spellcasters could be pilots, unless you had an artifact furnace that would eat magic items to be able to fuel the ship. Interesting note: you could have an artifact furnace in 5th edition, and an artificer would become amazing by sacrificing its infused magic items into the furnace to make the ship go. If that's the type of Spelljammer you want to play. Not everyone necessarily wants to play that type of Spelljammer, so you know, your mileage may vary. What was this wasp? Okay, so these ships all basically fit. But I want to get the vessels on here next. And the vessels are going to be a lot bigger. So they're going to eat up a lot more space. But there's less of them. So let's get that situated so we know what we're actually dealing with here. Wasp through Bombard are vessels. And we can change the scale. Like we can break the map in half, right? We could break... Yeah, we could break the map here and like have vessels up here with this size square, and then we could break the map and then have craft. There's less craft, but they eat more squares. Like a flitter, like a flitter ship occupies a full 50-foot space. A spiderling, it's a 40-foot ship. So these things are occupying larger spaces, but we can still make them work too. So let me get rid of that. We're going to have to redo the grid anyway, so it won't be a big problem. How do I want to do this? Right, let's go fetch craft. Duplicate this in the ship grid, and then skiff, we're going to duplicate that in the ship grid, and then manta ray, we're going to duplicate that in the ship grid. We're going to duplicate that in the ship grid. How are we looking here? Yeah, we're looking good. Cuttlefish, we're gonna duplicate that in the ship grid. Duplicate the group in the ship grid. Bam. Craft. You can grab all these craft and drop them down here, and give me a hot second. My coffee's full. I gotta go get it. I'll be right back. Let's see. I want to unjumble these. Arrow, cuttlefish. I need to clean these up. Craft. Manta ray. skiff. Spiderling. Let's merge that down. Good. Anti-ray. Good. Skiff. It looks like we have a flaw on our map down here. We're gonna have to change it after all anyway. Yeah, I guess so. Good. Merge that down. And drop it back in to low opacity. We already know we're going to change the size of the grid, so that's going to work out okay. Let's go with Cuttlefish, Manta, Skiff, Spiderling. Okay. I think we want to rotate the full set so they're facing free transform. Facing nose down. That makes it easier for us to think about it. Arrow, Cuddle, Flitter, Manta, Skiff, Spiderling. How do I want to scale these things up? Way fucking bay. Let's keep everything relative to each other. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8, 9, 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. See, that's way too big. I can't have, with this grid size, I cannot do that. But I could probably do it half the size. So let's try 5 by 5. 5 by 5. You got it, Echo. One, two, three, four, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. This size is going to actually work. So we'll have to just make a much smaller grid size and have these things sit on there, which should be fine. Let's get our hammer ship. Let's duplicate this layer. Bam. That fits pretty well. There we go. Footer. By 40. Eight, that's 4. Okay, so it's supposed to sit in that space. That's great. Duplicate the layer, pull that out, drop it in, push it down, scoot it over. There, this is nicely. Good. Manta. Cuttlefish is 20 by, oops. Cuttlefish is 20 by 20. Let's go up and grab the living ship. Duplicate. Burp, burp, burp. Thank you, Timely Timer. What time is it? 10:40. Okay. We're doing good. Wham, wham, wham. Fish. How big is the arrow? Arrow is only 15 by 10. All right. Yeah, we could probably do that. Let's go with the cuttlefish. feels like 15 by 15. Yeah. Yeah. Skip is what, 20 by 20? Yeah. Skiff. And then the Manta has a 40-foot space. So we can have that duplicate for the Spiderling. There we go. Fucking righteous. These things are so cool. The Mecha book is going to be awesome because it uses all the mechanics for the fighter craft and just puts them into a human form. I mean, it's really simple. But it's sick, yo. Transform. It is sick. That tells me that this isn't large enough. We could probably take that Spiderling. Oh, we can stack the arrow and the cuttlefish. That'll work. So we'll do that. We'll do that instead. We'll take the skiff. We'll bring it back over here. Take the cuttlefish. We can drop it underneath here. Yeah, we're gonna have to suss that out. Okay, so So I need to figure out how to unpack these things. I don't need a grid for the entire page. I could just have a grid per ship. Just like box in the space that they're in and then like get rid of all, like this doesn't need to be there. That could be, this could be white space beyond that, right? Like that. So we can isolate each ship and then just position them separately. That might actually make the most sense, but I want to do them all on the same grid so that I have consistency in the size. That's important. Shice. All right. You do the same thing for the craft. Thinking it through. That should work. All right. All right. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Let's go back to the craft tokens. And let's grab one of these grids. No. Okay. Wait, how does it fit over here? A lot more than these. Okay, cool. This is great. This is actually super good. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Holy Hannah. All right, we can make it bigger. Whoop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Almost there. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Good. Just needs to be a little bit smaller. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. On point. Good. Now we have fucking great. All right, that's really good. Zegama Beach. We say we merge down. Just like we were talking about. Good. And redraw those, and then we got yeah, this will work out. Then we have the spiderling. We're going to move the spiderling over to here so it can fit inside the grid space as well. There we go. Like that. Footer. Let's get that all lined up proper. Good. And the cuddle. Good. Arrow. Good. Good. And now we can erase all of this excess. Like that. Don't need any of that. Cool. Now we get the base for a grid that we can lay down. Boom, down, down, down. Okay, let's build. Let's keep building. Oh, I must have. Did I lock up? Yep, I sure did. Let's close that out and reopen it. Ship grid. I think we can make this work. Go down to 1 pixel. I don't know how many pixels this is. Pixels. Let's see how that does. Too much. So how wide is that? This is... Oh my god, that's so close. Okay, 100. It's 198, so it could be 2 pixels more. And it'll be a solid 200. 100 pixels. Oh my god, it actually is 100 pixels per inch. That's a whole... Holy shit, I did not anticipate that. That makes our life a hell of a lot easier. So let's just take a... let's just grab the square brush here and make sure it is 100 pixels. Flip. Wow. All right, we can figure this out. We'll do it like that. Hey Karen, how you doing? We're making a page of all the vessels and craft that we have in the game because we have this on page 10 here. we have the pre-generated ships, the basic statistics of how the ships are, and the craft, but then it goes into ship facing, and at no point do we really define what each ship looks like for reference, but we use them throughout the document. So I figured it would make a lot of sense for us to have a single page that labels each of them accordingly. And so I'm going through the process of building that currently. I don't know if it makes for good TV or not, but it's something that needs to get done. And one of the things I built this channel to do is to make sure that A, I get shit done, and B, show people how it's done, like how to do it, how to get it done. Because a lot of people don't know how to build books, or like what goes into it, or like some people don't know how much work goes into illustration or page design or mechanical development. That's one of the goals of the channel, is to, for people that are interested in making these things, like how much labor goes into the size. Like I'm at about 500, no, almost 600, yeah, probably around 600 hours of stream time, of just streaming. And that's probably half the actual time needed to build the book. So there's probably been about 12 to 1500 hours put into building this book so far. We're not quite done yet. Almost. But this will probably end up being like a 1600 hour project. That is a very large time. How you doing? How's your cat doing, Karen? Oh, poor little boobums. Oh. That's a rough go. Poor little monster. I got about a half hour left. Ish. And I'm going to make a video about piloting for tomorrow. And then I have Monday's a holiday for me, so I have the day off. So I'll be able to continue streaming the elemental illustrations for the books, for the planets, and then potentially be done with that and work on the final illustration. My other cat made oh that sucks. Oh, poor Chizos. When it rains, it pours, you know? Let's do that. I'm trying to lock down this square. This is the easier way to do it. I should have just done it this way the whole time. Get my borders straight. There. Now I can do this because it's boxed in. I'm just an idiot. I could have done it just a 100 by 100 square, pixel square, and just measure it out with the sizing tool. But alas, airwax. So we're going to go modify. We're going to contract by 1 pixel, and then bloop, and then we can duplicate that layer and line it up like that. Merge down, duplicate the layer. There, now we have a 100 by 100 pixel inch square with 1 pixel border. That lines up pretty well with these craft. I can resize the shapes to make sure they fit perfectly. Duplicate. Merge down. Yep. Yep. This is the way. Take this down to the living ship. Thump, thump, thump. And then the next one we'll have is a scorpion ship, turtle ship, and tyrant ship. So scorpion, turtle, tyrant. This isn't the most exciting work, I know. But it is mission critical. Let's go down to duplicate here, and then Thank you. Yeah, they're pretty fun. The amount of weapons I have per ship is different than what's listed in the actual rules that Wizards published. But there's one siege weapon and one mounted weapon per 50-foot space on these ships, so that they properly scale. When you do fleets and squadrons, the amount of dice that you throw for damage is equal to the number of 50-foot squares that the squadron can occupy, and up to 10. It's like a squid ship occupies a 5x5 space. So a squadron of squid ships would be 2 5x5 spaces. The two of them together is 10 squares. So you could do up to 10, and then the rank of the crew that pilots the ships determines the damage die. First through fifth rank, D4, D6, D8, D10, D12 damage. So a third rank crew piloting a squadron of 2 squid ships, if you had them attack together as a full volley, would do, third rank crew, 10d8 damage times 10. Because a siege weapon does like a single ballista, like the single ballista here would do d4 times 10 damage. So between the 2 ballistas, this trebuchet, and these 2 ballistas, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weapons on this 5x5 craft. The trebuchet would be doing a d8 times 10. These would be d4, 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 but rolling 44 and a d8, and then adding those up and then multiplying by 10 is a little bit more complicated than just take the rank of the crew to make their experience become the damage die that they roll to reflect their ability to coordinate as a ship. So a third rank crew would do 8d8 all the time, and then it's the size of the ship that determines how many of those 8s that you throw. So if you really wanted to make it simple, you could just roll a d8 and multiply the damage by 100 if you wanted to make it that granular. Or you could do 10 8-sided dice, or if you really wanted to get granular, you could do 44 plus d8 and then multiply that by 10. But we recommend making the dice as simple as possible so it's fun to throw. I mean, if you like throwing a fistful of dice and adding them up, and that's what the action is on your game, and everyone decides that's how you want to do it, have at it. I am not here to shit on your fun. But it is certainly not the only way to do it. So it's, yeah. Anyway, there's that. Whatever that's worth. Will there be, will these be in, oh yeah. This is going to be, so here's page 10. Here's the document, right? So panning out a little bit. This is the ships and equipment section. So here's a page of pre-generated ships, and then the following page is maneuverability, turning, as well as landing, taking off, and what kind of terrain can the ships float in, and then it goes into combat. So there needs to be a page where we're depicting each of the ships, because these ships show up throughout the document as part of the sample. So yeah, so we're going to put the page, right between these two. So this is going to become page 12, and so page 11. This will be page 11 when we finish it. So I have vessels up here, and then we have craft at a different scale down here. So we'll say craft, 1 square equals 5 feet, and up here we'll say vessel, 1 square equals 5 feet. And then the idea is to put put a label under each one. I don't know how big I need to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create the space for these, and then I'm going to import the page here into Microsoft Word. Just drop it in as an extra page, and then see how it sits to see where the font is at. And if the fonts all sit pretty, it should be fine. So I don't anticipate there being a problem, because this font size is, I mean, we're typically using a 14-point font. when at this scale. So I could use a 12 point. Like I could use, I could probably use this 12 point font here, and that would be sufficient for labeling here. So that should work. So I should only need a 1-inch gap, or 100. Yeah, this is 100 pixels. So this is 200 pixels. So it's obviously not 100 pixels per inch. It's much less than that. But this should be sufficient anyway. That should be sufficient. And if I have to, I could drop down to a 10-point font. But I don't think that's going to be necessary. I think 12 caps is going to be good. So, but we have to suss it out. So we have to build the grid, blah, 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 blah. We have to make it all fit, which is what we're in the process of doing. So I'm going to leave this grayed out grid in place while we place all the tokens in their position that we want. And this one as well, because we're redoing the grid to make sure it all sits perfectly. So let's see. That's all the tensors. Let's do yeah, let's just do that. I got 10 minutes left. And then I'll take this offline and finish it offline. Come back on Monday. We'll continue working on the world, the different elemental worlds. We're working on para elementals right now. We'll be able to finish those up. Yeah, we can have those finished on Monday. And then Tuesday through Friday, hopefully we can get the last illustration done. It's just a planet illustration that we're working on. So it shouldn't be too back-breaking to resolve that. Yeah. We can do this. Yeah. No. Yes. Flying fish, and what's the next one? Lamprey. And then Shrike, Space Galleon, Wasp. Yeah, that's about right. Tap, 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 tap. Duplicate the layer. Feels about right. Dun, 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 dun. bubbles a bit big. Good. Duplicate that layer. Settle down. Seal that up. And again, our priority isn't, we don't, the way that Spelljammer technically works is that I would extend the air bubble out like this. It's like, it would have an air bubble like roughly this big. Kind of like that-ish. Which is really difficult to keep track of on a 50-foot scale map, where each square is representing 50 feet and your ship fits squarely, literally, pardon the pun, squarely inside of the space that it occupies. Like it's it's between 100 and 150. Like the Wasp ship specifically is 120 feet. So it's a little smaller than this. Let me shrink this down a touch. It's actually just about, you know, about like that in size. But the air bubble represents the space that it occupies. So if you're not, while you're operating on a grid, you can easily, you don't need to have this grid underneath the token, because the air bubble itself conforms to the 3x3 space. So as long as your bubble is lining up roughly, like if you're using tokens and shit, like pushing around on a VTT or whatever, it'll snap the grid and the bubble will automatically fit to the grid. So the ship is centered inside of the bubble. So the ship is always sitting inside the space that it occupies. But this makes no confusion about how much space the ship is actually occupying on the battlefield for things like, am I within reach, or is this going to get hit by a spell effect or whatever. You have to be precise about what's actually happening to make 5e combat work as intended. You could free yourself up and do Theater of the Mind and use this just as effectively as you can do Theater of the Mind with characters at the 5-foot scale during combat. But everyone knows, like when you're visualizing things in Theater of the Mind, you're doing so already knowing what the rules behind like what dash, disengage, a 10-foot reach, all these things mean as a point of reference for you then to let go of the map and use Theater of the Mind to be able to depict and narrate how combat happens. A lot of these rules, I would assume, if you're a Theater of the Mind type of person, that you would also be able to drop this into Theater of the Mind. But once you have the same level of complexity for ship combat as you do for character combat at the 550 and 5-foot scale, then you can decide how much of that do you want to keep on the map and actually engage in square by square combat, or knowing inside how that stuff works, you could disintegrate all of it and just narrate it Theater of the Mind until like one ship is close enough to engage another in 5-foot scale combat if you want to do deck-to-deck combat like that. Or maybe you prefer resolving character at the 5-foot scale as Theater of the Mind because you don't want to have to think about it that much, but you do like the idea of keeping ships on a map so you can keep an eye on where things are at and what's going on with them. That you could actually depict as 5e scale combat instead. Or you can transition between the two. Like, while we're closing distance from 500 feet to 5 feet, the 50-foot scale map isn't really important as long as the ships stay adjacent to each other at the 500-foot scale. You can be narrating as theater of the mind that those two ships are engaged in a dogfight. And on the larger map, they're staying in proximity with each other at the 500-foot scale. But you know that at the 50-foot scale, they're dodging and rotating around each other and trying to get cuts in and take shots at each other. But you don't have to specifically spell that out with 5-foot square movement at that 50-foot scale if you don't want to. So you can save map combat for 500 feet and 5 feet and skip 50 feet. Or if you're doing fighter combat with multiple ships, maybe you want to focus in on actually doing square by square combat at the 50-foot scale, because fighter ships fit inside of one 50-foot square, and not worry about the 500-foot scale, and not worry about engaging at the 5-foot scale until the ships are colliding with each other and people are jumping from one ship to another. But if you're planning on keeping your characters on separate fighter ships during a dogfight, then you don't have to worry about the 5-foot scale at all, unless they are occasionally driving by and can like reach out with like a halberd or something and hit a pilot 10 feet away. But you don't need to grind down to the 5-foot scale for that one attack of opportunity as you shoot by on your ship. So you can, once you digest the mechanics of how this works, the DM can choose what do I actually need to depict inside of combat, because everything's broken up into individual 10-foot square, like 10 square maps. So you can drop in 10 square maps as you need to on your kitchen table or on a virtual tabletop. Like I can, a Roll20, you can have up to a 100 by 100 square grid, which is everything that I've ever done. That is way more space than necessary, working at these 10 square increments. So you just don't need that much space. So like even like the fleet battle for Light of Zaraxis at the end of the book, when we've got 30 ships fighting 30 ships, you still only need a 30 by 30 square area, which is 1/9 the capacity of what can actually be held on a virtual tabletop. So nothing in the system is overclocked, because if you get much bigger than that, then you just scale out to 1 mile, and then you're too big to be engaging in combat anyway. So just the physics of how far away ships can actually attack each other creates a cap on how large of a table space do you actually need to be able to depict combat at any scale. So, and this also works once you ingest this information and make it your own. You can start looking at dungeons and caverns and having them plotted out as a hex, as a crawl through at the 50-foot scale. And then you can just drop a 10 by 10 grid map in the middle of the cavern if you're going to fight an ogre or something. You don't need to have all 100 squares and 100 squares to depict the 50-foot scale map, or like a what would that be? 5 by 5, a 50-foot, a 200-foot cabin would be like would be what, 20 squares by 20 squares. So you'd be a 20 square map, but you might only need like 5 or 8 squares. So you can just lay down 10 by 10 tiles as needed in the room. So you can, once you make scaling part of the language that you have in your game, you can really lean into what do you actually want to do with the stuff. So it opens up more options, more opportunities for the type of adventures that you can narrate. Like in the hex crawl that I'm doing, it has 10 mile squares, which can be broken down into a 10 by 10 grid of 1 mile squares, which can be broken down into a 10 by 10 square of 500-foot squares, which can be broken down into a 10 by 10 square, a grid of 50-foot squares, which can be broken down into a 10 by 10 grid of 5-foot squares. So I could take a 10-mile map of hex crawl, or like random environment, ruin environments, and grind down to the scale that I actually want inside of the space, and expand on that to be able to engage in the combat at the moment, and then pan back out. There's another battle 250 feet that way, and it's going at the 50-foot scale. It'll take me 1, 2, 3 rounds to get there, because that's the speed my characters can move on foot. Hey, somebody new. What's up, Ben? Question. Okay. Prior to release of the book, I'm using the Spelljammer Combat Expanded Supplement from DMsGuild, okay, that uses officer roles a la Saltmarsh. Ha ha ha. Yeah, you could use that, I guess. How compatible would that be with your rule set? You could do that. I would recommend, once this book comes out, it'll be out in a couple weeks. So probably 3, maybe 4 weeks. I want it done at the end of the month, but it might not be until like early February, but it's soon. But that might not help you right now. What I would recommend when the book actually comes out is we have rules, but they act differently. The way that Salt Marsh works is that basically like the ship has an action, and like if you're like say the bosun or something like that, like you can I think like use an ability check and then like do like you can move extra speed or something like that. The way that we break it down is we break down the role into action economy that can be fluidly moved between a pilot. Like if you're on one of these fighter craft down here, this is the 5-foot scale. If you are in say let's say a flitter ship, this is a ballista and these are harpoon flingers. This is an eldritch cannon and this is the pilot's chair. A pilot is within 5 feet of an eldritch cannon, so you'd be able to use that. These are actually on a top deck, so these are a little bit further away and in a different room than where this is at. We have a floor map for you. But saying all that, the pilot as a character can use an object interaction to steer the ship to be able to use a move action as your character would at the 5-foot scale. And then you have your action, which you could use for a dash or a disengage. But you could also use it for like casting a spell or firing an arrow from where you're in position. Or you could use your attack to use the Eldritch Cannon to fire a cantrip to do like D4 times 10 damage or whatever it is if you're going to pump some spell points into it. But you can break up your action economy between what your character can do. All these things uses the same action economy. So like if you're playing a support role, you could use your bonus action to like help somebody target, which would be giving whoever it is that's firing a siege weapon, they'd have advantage on their attack roll, for instance. And you could then use like a reaction to help reload a siege weapon. So you're using your same action economy. Verbal command takes command of different weapons or ships. And the object interaction, depending on if you're a pilot or if you're a squadron commander, you use your object interaction to dictate actions on how the ship moves using normal 5e 5-foot scale combat. All ships move 5 squares as a move. So if you take the dash action, you can move 10 squares. At the 50-foot scale, that's 10 squares, but if you pan out to the 500-foot scale, that'd be 1 square. Unless you increase the scale of speed, in which case you could move 500-foot squares. And then you zoom out to the 1 mile scale. And so you can you can accelerate to the 1 mile scale and move 10 miles as a normal move. And then you could, like a rogue. If your rogue is the pilot, they have cunning action. So they would be able to use their bonus action as a dash. So having a rogue pilot is really very Han Solo-ish, in that they're really good pilots. So they can use their bonus action to increase the movement and maneuverability of the ship while keeping your reaction and your action for attacks. These ships can engage in melee combat. The flitter doesn't have any melee weapons, but it's got a shitload of weapons on it. However, the Illithid cuttlefish, each of these tentacles can be used to attack and latch onto people. It's only a 20-foot by 20-foot ship, but it could the pilot could use their attack actions. And like an Illithid has multi-attacks, so it can attack twice per round. So you'd have 2 attacks as a pilot. An Illithid pilot could grab with a tentacle one person and could grab hold of a ship with another and then latch on and then ride that ship like a horse. It's like this little cuttlefish being 20 feet versus this squid ship, which is 250 feet. The cuttlefish would sit easily inside this 50-foot square. So you could actually have a whole bunch of cuttlefishes crawling around on top of this squid ship, using its tentacles to tear the ship apart in melee combat against your ship. While you could zoom into the 5-foot scale, and a siege, like a character could be in command of, pointing at the screen like you can see where my finger's at. A siege commander could take command of these 2 ballistas and this trebuchet and fire all those weapons together using the siege commander option of making an attack to make a ranged ship attack. And I did a video about that last week. It's actually, if you go to Phil Kearney here, and then you go to my videos, you can look here, Spelljammer Siege Weapons and Action Economy. I broke down how you can have a character use their attack actions to fire 1 or more siege weapons during combat, and if you fuck up your die rolls, you have to use a reload action. So you'd then be able to use your action or your reaction to reload, and you can use your bonus action and attacks during your action to command crews to fire ranged ship attacks, like we were talking about here. But the pilot can make actual melee attacks with the weapons that are built into the ship that they're operating. Like the squid has a massive piercing ram, but these ships get animated when a pilot takes command of them. They become machine ships, like constructs. So this squid has these tentacles that it could use for melee attacks. So it can stab and grab and grapple your ship or a smaller craft, or it can smash a dragon or whatever, depending on the scale and how you're engaging with ships. So you can break up your economy. If you don't want to use any of that, you could still use the salt marsh rolls to do whatever it is. I haven't looked at ship rolls in Salt Marsh in over a year, because once we figured out how to use action economy to make ships move like 5e combat during a 6-second round, all of those ship rolls became completely irrelevant. They were created so that so the players weren't sitting on their ass waiting to do something during combat, but they didn't give you 5e action economy during combat to do something on the ship. Now, with the mechanics that we have in here, all of your characters can be working together. You can have more than one person piloting a ship together. So you could have like a rogue using their actions to move and dash and swing in between ships, and be co-piloting with a paladin that could be using multiple attacks and smite spells to be hitting things with physical weapons on the ship, to just be tearing ships apart as you're like zigzagging through different craft. And if you have a 15 by 15 foot, like a 15 by 15 map, where you're depicting these things at the 500-foot scale, where it's one ship equals one square, you can be zagging through these different things and making attacks at stuff, just like your characters would be able to, like, if you had both characters on a horse, they'd be able to run through a crowd of orcs or goblins or ogres and be taking attacks and hitting them with lances and taking shots at them with a bow and casting spells at them as you're riding your horse through the battlefield. It's the exact same thing. So I don't remember what the ship rules. I know there's a lot of people that have created a lot of documents that use the rules of ships based on what Saltmarsh was, because they didn't have anything better to do. Like they've recreated those different things, but you could probably use anything in those ship rolls as an action or a bonus action. That'd probably be, I mean, I don't know offhand, because I don't remember what they do. And I don't know if that answers your question or not. Because obviously my answer is you should use in combat action economy to actually use combat. But until you actually have access to book, what the fuck are you supposed to do, right? So I would say you could use those rolls. Check out the siege weapon combat, because you can easily have your team working together to fire multiple siege weapons together and eat up their actions, their bonus actions, reactions together. But then if you allocate like the bosun and the captain and the cook and all that crap, if you want to use all that stuff mixed in with it, I would probably say your choice, bonus action or action. And then just use the rest of your stuff to do other stuff. So that's my take on it. Okay. Once I mean, there's some very specific rules about like squeezing through tight spaces, and like your ship can go 10,000, like 1,000, like a ship can hit 10,000 miles per round, but scale of combat is only at the 500-foot square. So your ship is capable of doing a shitload more speed than where you can actually engage in combat. So there's funky rules like, what if I want to move faster than the grid scale would dictate? It's like that's what we call surging. So like there's very specific weird rules about that. Or like, I can move 1,000 miles in a round and this guy's trying to escape me. Can't I just keep up with him? It's like, yes, you can. We call that pacing. So there's like a lot of really weird nuanced rules that exist inside of the game that once you start getting deep enough into combat to ask those questions, the rules are there for you. But if you never get that mechanically deep into tactical combat, they aren't necessary. But the information and language is there for you to be able to properly depict either theater of the mind or on grid. How can you be weaving in and out of combat? How can you be ducking around, rolling your ship over to fire at stuff? Like real cinematic combat shit with your ships using the 5e action economy. So it goes as deep as you want it to go to be able to perform basically any kind of maneuvers that you want. But if you just back out and look at the surface level, like the first surface level of movement, that's probably sufficient for what most people need to do. But people that really geek out over tactical shit can keep diving and diving deeper and deeper into more sub-optional variant system mechanics to really lean into diving from 500 to 50 to 5-foot scale, just so you could hit a guy like the captain on that fighter ship over there. I want to lash his face with a halberd, and then I want to yeet out and get the hell out of there at the 500-foot scale. Like you can zoom in, hit somebody, and then pan back out again. You can do that type of stuff, but it takes some processing to understand how to do it. But once you understand all the mechanics to it, it really just disintegrates into just narrative language, and you just get how it works. Kind of like you just get how 5e combat at the 5-foot scale works. So it's a little bit of it takes a little bit, which is why it's 100 some odd pages long. But once you break it all down, you can digest and use as much of it as you want, or as little. So we have a paladin who wants to be the pilot. Fuck yes. I'm actually going to be making a video. I have to log off here in a few seconds, so I'm just finishing up this conversation with you. Otherwise, I'm done. But I'm making I release a video every Sunday. So like and subscribe. You can get notification when I release it tomorrow. But I'm making a video as soon as we're done, specifically talking about how non-spell casting characters are depicted as pilots in this game. So even though a paladin has spells and has access to that stuff, I think it's great to allow rogues, fighters, barbarians. I think any type of character should be a pilot if they want to be, because otherwise you're just cutting off access to what your character could potentially be doing, right? If that makes any sense. Let's see. Well, that's not the one I wanted. Where is it? Page 4? And then I'll go away. Warp 4 burp. Oh wait, no, it's the equipment. It's the ships and equipment. That's right. Workbench, equipment and ships. Here we go. And then I'll kick out of here. There we go. Yeah, see, the illustration I wanted to build for this was specifically a barbarian piloting a ship. And then, so we'll be talking about replacing attunement with focus. Focus is like a light form of concentration. That if you take damage and you're disrupted, then you lose the ability to pilot the ship until you regain focus. As opposed to going through the attunement process and being required to be a spellcaster, that just eliminates people from the crew, and it forces your spellcaster to be on the helm instead of being on deck, helping your crew firing off spells and doing support shit. So we want to be able to diversify who gets to do what, and depending on who, like a barbarian makes an awesome pilot, because if they're raging, they gain that the resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And because they become the entity that controls the ship, they fuse their soul with the ship while they're piloting. They can transfer that resistance to the ship, so that the ship doesn't have to take as much damage either. Kind of like warding bond. The cleric spell warding bond, where you select somebody and you can take damage for them and reduce it. Basically, a pilot automatically can use the warding bond ability of the spell to be able to help the ship resist and take damage, and you can make saving throws for the ship. But then you become the eyes and the body, the sensors of the ship. So like if you get hit with a blinding effect, like if you target the ship with a blinding effect, you can knock out the pilot's vision. So now they're going to be at disadvantage on making attack rolls, which is why you might want to have multiple pilots, so that you can switch between who's using the act. Like if your barbarian goes down, the cleric needs to heal them, and then the paladin steps in and they can take control, and now they're using their aura to be able to protect the ship. Stuff like that. But we break all that crap down in the spellcasting chapter. So, but yes, it's incredibly fun. That I think one of the guys that hangs out here occasionally, Hornetico, he had made a class that he published on the DMsGuild called the Stunt Pilot. And he didn't know I was doing this book when he made that, but that character is specifically designed to take command of vehicles and be able to give them like stunts and extra tricks and do extra damage and stuff like that. And he used that during the playtest on a fighter ship. And it was fucking awesome because it was a martial character that basically had like battle master maneuvers that you could use in a pilot ship. So that was really cool. So there's a ton of cool crap you can do with this stuff once you get how it works. So it really is just 5e combat at a larger scale, and your ship is really just like a really big horse. It's that simple, but you have to look at all the physics that go in. How does that break down, and all the mechanics of exploration and combat using 5e language. So anyway, that's the video I'm going to have tomorrow about piloting. So yeah, it's pretty fun. But yeah, I gotta go. I've hit my window. I'm going to be doing some brunch here in a few minutes, so I gotta take off, guys. Thanks for checking, Ben. Thanks for the great questions. I love all the questions, mostly because I usually have a smart answer for it. But if somebody ever catches me off guard and I don't have a valid answer, that's just something I can add and make sure that I cover the bases. But so far, I've been able to cover every base that I've ran across. So, but it's taken us a year to build the thing. So, I mean, if you take your time, if you slow cook it, it's going to turn out good. So, anyway, that's it, guys. I got to kick out of here. Keep an eye out for the video tomorrow about piloting. And I'm not sure how far down the rabbit hole I'm going to go with all the things you can do as a pilot. I think I'm just going to keep focused on attunement and replacing attunement and like concentration effects and stuff like that, just to keep it simple. But keep an eye out for that tomorrow, and then I'll be back on Monday. We're going to continue doing our the illustrations. We're illustrating different planets, and yeah, we're almost done. Very, very close. Just got to clean it up. So, all right, that's it, guys. See you on the other side. I really appreciate y'all tuning by. Thanks. Really, thanks a lot. All right, outie.